Remember when I talked about those Jesuit tricks? There's a high proportion of Jesuits and Jesuit influence in Catholic media. You might even say they have a disproportionate influence in Catholic media. Jesuits are the great promoters of modernism in the church today. If you see a priest promoting women's ordination, undermining the theology of the Eucharist, trampling on sexual morality, or spitting on traditional liturgy and reverence, it's probably a Jesuit or has close ties to the Jesuits. And so I say again, I'm tired of all these Jesuit tricks. And here's another good example of what I'm talking about, because it comes from establishment Catholic media, who are deeply tied to the Jesuits. It came out in the news last week that a pair of nuns was arrested for embezzling a ton of money from charity and gambling with it in Las Vegas. If you hadn't heard this monstrous story, don't worry, I'll get you up to speed. From the Tampa Bay Times, 2 nuns stole $500,000 for trips to Las Vegas, but the church doesn't want them prosecuted. The 2 women, reportedly best friends, are accused of pilfering funds on trips and casino visits. Let's have a look at the nuns, because this will be important later. Oh yeah, I love those habits. And they're citing the Washington Post. An old check allegedly exposed decades of lies. For nearly 28 years, Sister Mary Margaret Kruper was a principal of St. James Catholic School, an elementary school in Torrance, California, a coastal suburb southwest of Los Angeles. Around the same time when Kruper announced she was retiring earlier this year, a family at the school asked for a copy of an old check they had written to St. James. When the staff members found the check, the Long Beach Press-Telegram reported they realized it had not been deposited in St. James' account, but a different bank account. That was among the first clues that would unravel a vast fraud that was allegedly conducted by Kruper and Sister Lana Chang, another nun and longtime St. James teacher. School officials recently told parents the 2 nuns stole around $500,000 from the school. Come, Lord, quickly. The school said that the 2 women, reportedly best friends, used the pilfered funds on trips and casino visits. We do know that they had a pattern of going on trips. We do know they had a pattern of going to casinos. And the reality is they used the account as their personal account, says Marge Graff, an attorney representing St. James, as she told a group of parents at a meeting last Monday night, according to the Beach Reporter. The revelations came as a shock to parents and church members, who were not only operating under the impression that St. James was struggling to stay afloat in fiscally troubled waters, but also dealing with the aftershocks of tragedy. In 2014, 4 people were killed, including a 6-year-old boy when an intoxicated woman plowed into a crowd of people leaving a Christmas concert at St. James, according to the Los Angeles Times. The complex feelings working through the church are compounded by the Archdiocese's refusal to pursue criminal charges against the nuns, the Press-Telegram reported. We were an ATM, and the people know it, and they won't ask for justice, Jack Alexander, a parent at St. James, told the Southern California News Group. All this while the crisis in the church is going on, and everyone in positions of authority are losing a lot of face and a lot of credibility. They're not going to prosecute these people. While Kruper worked as the school's principal, Chang was an 8th grade teacher. She also retired this year. Both women were members of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet Order. Never even heard of them, but they seem to be part of the Pantsuit Brigade. According to what Monsignor Michael Myers explained to parents last Monday at the meeting, the church launched an independent financial investigation after the oddity regarding the old check was discovered. The review determined that Kruper and Chang had been committing alleged fraud for at least 10 years. An old unused bank account belonging to the church was the key to the alleged misconduct, Myers explained. The account was opened in 1997, but not used in years. Kruper would divert checks made out to the school for tuition and fees into this forgotten account. She allegedly endorsed the checks with a stamp saying, St. James Convent, not St. James School. The 2 nuns then tapped the funds for their personal use, Myers said. Parents told the Press-Telegram that they knew the 2 nuns went on gambling trips, but the nuns explained the jaunts were gifts from a rich uncle. That should be your first red flag, but okay. Okay, that's awful, and I shouldn't have laughed when reading it. I have to cope somehow. And the picture that accompanies most of the reporting from various outlets, like in that article from Tampa, is of what I like to call Sister Hillary Clinton. Always elderly women in pantsuits trying to look like administrative professionals. The same is true in this story, as these nuns were of the modern variety. And I won't go off on a tangent about why religious should wear habits, and why I have a deep and profound respect for men and women religious who go out in public in their habits, or for priests who wear their clerics in public. That's for another time. But why I'm tired of Jesuit tricks in this regard is because of this story. Similar story from Crux. LA Archdiocese won't press charges against nuns for misappropriation. Take a look at that picture. That's a bit different looking, isn't it? Let's have a quick look at the article. The Archdiocese of Los Angeles said it will not pursue charges against 2 religious sisters who were found to have misappropriated a substantial amount of money from one of its Catholic schools. I'd actually like to know how much money they took, by the way, just out of morbid curiosity, I suppose. In a November 28th letter sent to families of St. James School in Redondo Beach, California, the pastor of the parish associated with the school said the Archdiocese would address the matter internally. The religious order Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet, of which Sister Mary Margaret Kruper and Sister Lana Chang are members, has agreed to a full restitution of money used for personal matters by the 2 women, the letter said. I'm very curious how they're going to get that money. The Los Angeles Times daily newspaper said Kruper was a former principal of the school and Chang was a former teacher there and also served as vice principal. Both retired at the end of 2017-2018 school year. The Archdiocese did not disclose the amount of money involved or how it was used, but said the matter was discovered following a financial review, and the religious order will impose appropriate penalties and sanctions on each of the sisters in accordance with the policies of the order. On behalf of the school and our parish, the Archdiocese met with Torrance Police Department, which has jurisdiction for our school, to advise the department of the matter and that the Archdiocese does not wish to pursue criminal proceedings against the sisters, but instead plans to have the Archdiocese, the school, and the order address the situation internally through the investigation, restitution, and sanctions on the sisters, said a letter made available to Catholic News Service by the Archdiocese and signed by Monsignor Michael Myers, pastor of the church. And you can read the rest of that article on Crux if you like. But before we leave this, let's go back up. That picture. Let's talk about that picture. What would possess the modernists at Crux to run that picture? That makes it look like contemplative Dominican sisters were behind the theft, not modern nuns too hip for the habit. And I know that there are plenty of accounts of religious in full habits being predators or thieves or murderers or any other sin you wish to name. That's fine, and I acknowledge that the wearing of a habit doesn't preclude religious from being sinners. I'm not a moron, at least in that regard. But what is striking about this story is twofold. One, thankfully, the secular media is showing what the sisters really look like. And I'm thankful for that because even secularists know what a nun is supposed to look like. And second, the worst kinds of religious always reject the habit. In my experience, there tends to be 3 kinds of religious. The kind who reject the habit, the kind who wear the habit at their monastery or convent but wear street clothes in public, and the types who probably don't own street clothes and only wear the habit. But the deception here is telling. Shame on Crux for pushing the idea that the nuns involved wore habits. It was subtle but definitely on purpose. The only picture they ran was of those nuns looking at that storefront window and not one of the perpetrators. How many news articles have you read that had a picture of, but not of the perps? That's a bizarre thing to do. So let's dig deeper. And to that we go back to Crux itself, to its page their About page, to find out what their mission is. Again, this is from their About section. Smart, wired, and independent, Crux has one mission: to deliver the very best and smart, wired, and independent Catholic news. Yeah, let's see how independent they are. Crux is smart in that we do more than skim the surface. We do the deep digs that bring to light the meaning of stories, not just the facts. We're wired in that we've got access to the people who matter in the Catholic Church, from top to bottom. We're also independent in that we're not owned by any institution, and we strive not to lean either left or right. Being independent and having that kind of access rarely go together, and I'll bet you they're on the list of Catholic Pravda outlets. We were launched as a project of the Boston Globe in September 2014. Independent, right. And we struck out on our own in April 1st, 2016. At the time, it seemed a slightly risky thing to do, but today Crux is better and stronger than ever, because nothing says independent like ties to the institutional mainstream fake news media like the Boston Globe. Our aim is to be a one-stop shopping destination for the best in Catholic news, analysis, and commentary. An interesting tidbit that was left unmentioned is that the Knights of Columbus financially support Crux. Again, I call into question their independence. If establishment Catholic organizations like the Knights of Columbus and mainstream media organizations like the Boston Globe have direct ties to Crux, real independence is being viewer-supported, and includes outfits like Church Militant, Lepanto, and of course, random guys on Twitter or on YouTube like myself. Crux calling itself independent is laughable, but people love independent media, which is why an outfit founded by the Boston Globe calls itself independent. This story is actually tragic and would have made bigger waves in the media if it wasn't for the absolute state of things right now. If you want signs of modernism being a corrupting force in the church, it's stories like that, of these nuns stealing from the parochial school they ran, and by extension, from Christ and his church in order to go to Sin City. This is also tiresome. If you want to do your part to right things, support your local religious community, especially if they wear their habits in public. If you like videos like this, like and share this video and subscribe, and click that notification bell below. You can support my work if you want to through Subscribestar, and like a lot of other YouTube creators, I'm migrating over there. A link is found in the description below, along with links to my Twitter, the Sources blog, and the Return to Tradition Facebook page. Thanks for listening. I'm Anthony Stein. Viva Cristo Rey.